Most of us spend so much time in a state of stress, you kind of think that it's normal.
Yeah.
It's not. You are not designed to be in that state. And over time, it will destroy you. First thing you start to notice is your energy levels will fade. Then you're more likely to get ill because stress destroys your immune system. You're more susceptible to a cold or a flu. Stress awareness month 2022 is to bring ourselves back to something that's real. That, my dear friend, is the antidote.
Today's masterclass is on stress management. Our guest today is my dear friend Neil Shah, the founder of International Wellbeing Insights and Chief De-Stressing Officer of the Stress Management Society, a leading international expert on stress management and well-being. He is the author of Amazon's #1 best-selling Turning Negatives into Positives and Introduction to Neuro-Linguistic Programming and the 10-Step Stress Solution. He is renowned media personality on the subject of well-being, appearing regular on BBC Breakfast, BBC 5 Live and Sky Sunrise. Welcome, Neil.
Hey Anita, thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
My standard default response to that question is I'm wonderful, but truthfully, it's been a journey for the last couple of months. It's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster. So I know because of the work that I do, people expect me to respond to that with a positive statement like I'm good, I'm wonderful, amazing. And usually I am, but truthfully, the last few weeks haven't been. They've been far from it. But I'm sure we can get into why later in our discussion.
Yes, I'd love to hear about that. So what actually got you on your journey of stress management? Is it something you found there was a need for? Is there something you needed in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. My professional journey over the last 20 years has been born out of personal requirement, really. This isn't my job. This isn't my career. This is my ikigai. So the ikigai is a Japanese philosophy which quite literally translates to reason for being. I didn't choose this path chose me. And if you'd asked me 25 years ago, would I end up in mental health and stress management, I would have laughed at you. And it was actually off the back of a breakdown and sadly getting to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore and found that actually there really wasn't much out there to help me. And that was, as I said, just coming up to 20 years ago. And I went through an experience where I quite literally got to the point where I didn't want to be here, and I was I actually did seek out the permanent solution to a temporary problem. But it was through that experience and hitting rock bottom that I realised that what I'd experienced wasn't a tragedy, it was a gift. And I had the opportunity to do something with that gift. And what I wanted to do was help other people who went through the same kind of thing and hopefully prevent them getting anywhere near the point that I got to. And we came into existence as an organisation to effectively create a happier, healthier, more resilient world. A world that doesn't need the stress management society. So from day one, we were actively trying to make ourselves redundant. Sadly, decades later, we are further away from that goal than we were when we came into existence. And that's not through want of trying an effort. We've done a hell of a lot and had the opportunity to help millions of people over those 2 decades. But the challenge is the scale of the problem has only got bigger. And the impact it's having on society has only got worse. And we still aren't really comfortable opening up, discussing and exploring this subject that is sadly now one of the biggest killers on the planet. And even though we've allowed it, and I say that again, we have allowed it to get to that, still aren't doing anywhere near enough to protect some of the most vulnerable members of our societies.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it is a silent killer.
Yes, and it's not even that silent anymore, to be honest, because every day we wake up and we are quite literally living in an episode of Black Mirror. Like walking outside your front door is more fantastical than anything that we can find on Netflix. That if I told you 2.5 years ago that we would arrive in a world within a very short space of time where there'd be periods where you'd be locked in your home, you'd be told what to do, who to do it with, what to wear whilst you're doing it. requiring certain medical procedures to be able to leave your home and travel and maybe even work. And then, when that was all over, World War III is going to start. You would have laughed at me. But yet here we are. And given, the experience of the last couple of years, who knows what the future's going to hold? Maybe the vaccine will turn people into zombies. Maybe aliens will attack. Who knows? Now, as much as that sounds crazy today, is it any less crazy than some of the things that have actually happened over the last couple of years? Where, there's been periods where our fundamental human rights have been taken away from us. And, the reality is those human rights are inalienable. According to the UN Declaration of Human Rights, a government doesn't have the right to grant nor take away our human rights. Their job is to uphold them unless there are seriously extraordinary circumstances. Yet that is exactly what's happened. Now, wrongly or rightly, I'm not here to argue whether that should have been done or shouldn't have been done, but we have to bear in mind there are consequences. And the Johns Hopkins study that was published a few months ago has shown very clearly for the vast majority of the population, some of the restrictions and the impacts of the pandemic and the course of action that were taken have actually caused more harm than good. That's not my study, that's not my data, that's Johns Hopkins. And there's various other studies that have shown similar sort of things. The economic impact, the impact it's had on relationships, on communication, on social cohesion, on our very communities, the fabric of our communities that holds us together. And sadly, when that happens, there will be consequences. And we've seen a significant increase in mental health issues.
Yeah.
We've seen a significant increase in domestic violence, 1,500% increase in domestic violence. And even though the data currently does not show an increase in suicidality, we know there has been an increase. Now, why does the data not show it? Because there's such a backlog of kind of things being reported and coroner's reports and inquests and et cetera, et cetera. Even if you go to the ONS's website to look at the data, it says very clearly our data isn't full and accurate and there will be updates in the future. We might not know for a few years the true impact on mental health and deaths as a result of. But I can tell you just from anecdotal data and also direct feedback from organisations like St John's Ambulance that saw a 3 to 4 times increase in call-outs to suicides and attempted suicides. Giving stories from charities like Papyrus and various other organisations that deal with suicide. Papyrus deal with suicide to children. The increase in children as young as 7, 8, 9 taking their own lives. There are only so many of those kind of stories you can hear before they start keeping you awake at night. But here's the challenge, Anita. You don't hear those stories unless it's Robin Williams or Anthony Bourdain or someone famous. It doesn't make the news.
Yeah.
Even though in weird countries, when I say weird, that's not kind of being derogatory to any countries on the planet. It's an acronym that stands for Western, Educated, Industrialized, Rich, Democratic Countries, which should describe our countries, European countries, North American countries, that kind of thing. Suicide is the main cause of death in a man under the age of 45 in weird countries, rapidly becoming the main cause of death for a 15 to 29-year-old. I'll give you more context to this. In October 2020, in Japan, more people committed suicide than died from the whole entire year of COVID.
Wow.
In 1 month, more people took their own life than died of COVID in the whole entire year. In the US, military professionals are 4 times more likely to die as a result of suicide than of active combat. Your job is quite literally to put yourself in harm's way every day, yet you are more likely to die as a result of your own hand. Now, as I said, we've allowed ourselves to get to this point. Now, we don't have round-the-clock counters for cases of mental health. We don't have round-the-clock counters for deaths as a result of mental health. Because if we did put them up on the news next to that of COVID or whatever else, I think people would be absolutely shocked. Now, again, to add further context to why it's important we're having this discussion, in 2020, on the whole entire planet, about 50,000 people died of all the wars put together. If you add in all human violence, murder, homicide, etc., that number goes up to about 400,000. It was about 1 million people that took their lives. Now, again, if you watch the news right now, you'll see a lot of stuff about war and Ukraine and so on and so forth. I'm not sitting there saying that's not a tragedy. Absolutely is. Any human life lost is a tragedy. like not in any way diminishing that. But what's the real risk? For the vast majority of us, do the math. 50,000 people died of all the wars, 1 million people take their own life. That's 14.3% of all the people that die on the planet every year. And again, this is 2019 data. I'm sure this number is higher. According to 2019 data, 14.3% of the people that died that year died from suicide. That's a huge percentage.
Definitely.
So, and that's kind of the macro figures in terms of sort of the impact to society. Why am I so passionate about this? I started this journey off the back of an attempted suicide. So I know what it's like firsthand to be in a situation where the emotional pain you're experiencing is so great. And that sense that you've got nothing left to live for and you're better off not being here. I know what that feels like. Where, even though you know that the solution to the emotional pain you're experiencing is flicking the off switch permanently, it still felt like a good option. Now, I said I know what it's like from a first-hand perspective. I also know what it's like from a professional perspective. But interestingly, up until very recently, I had no idea what it's like to be on the receiving end of that kind of experience when it happens to someone close to you. Now, as I said, I've known a lot of people that take their lives in situations that I've been dealing with professionally. I've known people that, I've known sort of, as acquaintances or not particularly closely that have taken their lives. But it was about 6 weeks ago, one of my best friends in the whole world, someone very close to, spent a lot of time with, knew me inside out, probably out of all the people in my life, probably one of the top 5 closest people in my life, sadly took his own life. And forget close to home, that was as close as you can get. That was at home, basically, pretty much. And even though, as I said, this has been my work for a very long time, as much as I kind of understand what it's like to support and guide through that kind of an experience, nothing prepares you at all in any way, shape or form for when that actually happens. And this is why, for me, it's ultra important we start to double down on our efforts to start protecting the most vulnerable people in our societies. Because we can't put any more young people into the ground. Most of the people that sadly take their own life have the potential to have a long, fruitful, fulfilling life ahead of them. Very few of them have got significant underlying health conditions that could otherwise kill them. And this is really why we need to consider the societal failure here. It's very easy when someone's experiencing mental health to label the individual. Joe, Melanie, Melissa, Peter, Joanna was broken. They had mental health. They had depression. They had anxiety disorder. I don't agree with that anymore. My realization is it's not a failing of the individual. It's a failing of our society. That we have collectively failed these people because we've developed a society that's highly individualistic. It's encouraging narcissistic behavior. It's, very much people living for themselves. We're feeling isolated, many of us feeling lonely, we're feeling disconnected and disengaged. Now, I'm not just going to say that, I can back this up with data. We talked about the prevalence of mental health and suicidality in our Western societies. In terms of sort of the illness, it's 1 in 4 people experience mental health conditions. The estimates are by 2030, it will cost the global economy $6 trillion. Now, that's a big number. To give context to how big 6 trillion is, if we start counting right now from 1 to 6 trillion, it will take us 190,200 years. It will take us the lifespan of humanity to count to that number. That's how big a number it is. Even though it has that much cost and it kills that many people and it's such a common issue, we still haven't taken anywhere near enough action to do something about it. So, many people will be sitting there thinking, well, what can we do? How can we resolve this? Well, we don't need to look creatively and innovatively to be able to address this. We just need to look at cultures and societies around the world that have already got this right. So you might be thinking it's some highly advanced culture or a highly wealthy, affluent culture. You couldn't be further from the truth. There are cultures around the world, definitely non-weird cultures, and this ties in very much to the research that's been done around blue zones. Blue zones are where people typically can live up to 100 years of age. Again, it's not ones that have high infiltration of, medical technology or, advanced hospitals or vaccination programs. They're not rich countries. In fact, most of these are, basic, quite traditional societies that are living how they may have for many, many generations. You're talking about there's sort of remote sort of communities in the Himalayas, Papua New Guinea, South American sort of Amazonian cultures, and they have a low to no instance of mental health issues. I'll say that again, low to no instance of mental health issues and suicidality. It just doesn't exist in their cultures.
Gosh, that's amazing.
How is this possible? How is this possible? They don't have, counselors and antidepressants and, telecommunication channels to be able to stay in touch with each other. They don't have television and social media. Why is it that they don't have all of this wonderful sort of technology, science, and medical advancements that we do? Yet they still tend to do better at us than dealing with mental health. Why is that? And for me, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, Anita, let me ask you, why do you think that is? Why do you think that they basically have no issues with mental health? I'll tell you, they have a cultural vaccine. And that vaccine is quite literally love, compassion, and empathy brought about by a sense of community.
Yes.
And that is something we are sorely lacking in our advanced digital cultures. There is a direct correlation between the degradation of community and the rise and increase in mental health and suicidality in Western society over the last 50 or 60 years. As we are descending to this highly individualistic existence, we have seen a direct corresponding increase in mental health and suicidality. That, Anita, is why the theme for this month is community.
Yes.
Rather than labeling the individual as broken and then trying to patch up the individual with counseling or medication or some kind of therapy, that's great. And, that can help as a remedial measure. And also, typically on Stress Awareness Month, we talk about sort of, things that you can do as an individual. Do some mindfulness, get your exercise, eat healthy, etc. Over the last, 20, 30 years, that's kind of been the real focus of Stress Awareness Month. Well, this year we've decided rather than deal with the symptoms, we need to address the underlying root cause.
Yeah.
Until we fix our societies, until we have well-functioning communities that look out for each other. And we kind of saw that for a brief moment at the beginning of the pandemic before everybody descended back into this individualistic existence. And it's not about coming onto your doorstep and banging some pots and pans and clapping the NHS and things like that. But it's about reaching out and connecting and collaborating with the people around you. When I say community, that could be your local neighborhood. It could be your friends. It could be your neighbors. In, some of the biggest cities around the UK, you'll find that some of the loneliest people live. People that don't even know their next door neighbors because they're so busy and rushing around trying to sort their own personal needs out that they don't have the time for community. So community could be your neighbors, it could be your family, it could be your work colleagues, it could be your workplace, it could be your neighborhood, it could be your town, your city, our country, or maybe, just maybe, our global community of humanity. And when we start understanding we rise together or we fall together, and realizing that too many people are falling, maybe we can start standing shoulder to shoulder to work together to address the common challenges we are facing as a species.
And I think a lot of it is just coming back to the basic needs. Like you said at the beginning, loving your neighbor, helping. And I totally agree. At the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was aware of that. There was a lot more neighborly love. People were willing to help each other. And then after a short period, it goes back to normal, whatever normal is.
Absolutely. And I think this for me is a good point around finding the ability to, as you said, love thy neighbor, showing love, compassion, and empathy. We do live in a world that is actually encouraging you to hate. Now, why do I say that? That sounds like quite a negative statement, and I don't mean it to sound negative. I'm being realistic, but there is an antidote. There is a way to address this. What quantifies that statement that we're being designed to hate? Well, Anita, if you turn on the news, you watch Sky, CNN, Fox, BBC, whatever, how does it leave you feeling when you watch the news for 20 minutes, half an hour? How do you feel after?
Yeah, it's negative.
Yeah. You don't feel uplifted and happy and positive about the world, right? It's literally wars and pandemic and death and destruction and economic collapse, etc., etc. This kind of just basically, it's been filled with negative stories. You scroll through social media, the vast majority of what's being shared on social media pretty much marries up with what you're seeing on mainstream media. No matter what you're coming across when it comes to sort of online media, you're going to find that the vast majority of it is either negative or is painting a picture of what the world should look like or what your life should look like. And then if it doesn't marry up, you still feel miserable, right? Because if you come across images on Instagram of people having this picture perfect life and they're on the beach and they're drinking a green smoothie and it's like, wait, hold on a minute. I'm in London and it's raining outside and I'm drinking like a lukewarm cup of tea that tastes disgusting. My life does not look like that. So whether it's directly message of doom and gloom or message of, look how wonderful my life is, and then your life isn't. So generally people are being exposed to things that are not uplifting them and bringing them down. So it's very easy to draw conclusions around humanity that are not true. Because you and I both know, given the work that you do and given the work that I do, that the world is full of hope and potential and opportunity and love and compassion and empathy. We just don't share that.
Absolutely.
I'm going to add some context to this. I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman called Mo Gowda. He used to be the head of Google X, and he's done some podcasts, written a book around happiness. He actually came up with a formula for happiness. And the formula for happiness, according to him, and he's done a lot of work, so I think he's qualified to kind of to share this. And then his formula for happiness is where your life experience is equal to or greater than your expectations. I'll say that again. Happiness is where your life experience is equal to or greater than your expectations. For most of us in our weird societies, our life experience is less than our expectations. Because based on the information we're exposed to, our life experience should be up here. I should be driving a brand new Tesla, and I should have a home that looks like this, and a career that's paying me 80 grand a year, and my children should be perfect, and my body should look like this, and so on and so forth, right? High expectations, and often we're not meeting those. Going back to those non-weird cultures, the people that are living a little bit more of a traditional existence. When I say traditional, how generations of their family would have lived, for many generations. And their expectations of life are maybe a little bit more simple. Like, I want to make sure I've eaten today. I want to spend time with my friends and family. I want to be able to have a dance and sing this evening around the fire or whatever. Okay, I'm being a bit facetious. I'm sure that there is much more to their expectations. But it's not based on superficial elements. Much of our expectations are on things that don't actually matter. And we focus so much on the BS, wanting to buy things we don't need with money we don't have, to consume more, just to get that dopamine hit. But the moment it gets delivered from your Amazon Prime, then the dopamine dissipates, and then the next way, the next opportunity to get that dopamine hit is to place another order and keep consuming and keep engaging and watching that next episode of the box set. And it's just basic. We're addicted to the things that give us a dopamine hit, whether that be food or things we put into our mind, things we put into our energy field, things we're consuming. And then basically we're addicts.
Yeah, definitely.
And the biggest gateway drug on the planet is this. This is the biggest gateway drug. How many poor choices have you made as a result of going on your phone, whether that's something you bought, something you consumed, something you ate, something you did, some situation you got yourself into. People that are not addicted to these have a very different approach to life. They tend to be more mindful, more present.
And it's
And
so true.
And you know, they call apps that use this social media. They are anti-social media. They are literally, quite literally breaking down the fabric of society. I've started to extract myself from social media, other than to share updates. I don't read things. I don't scroll things. I might share things that are relevant. If people want to engage with them, that's up to them. I don't respond to comments. Why? Because I prefer to do my work in the real world, where it really matters.
Absolutely.
This isn't real. And this really is why the theme for this month is community. The theme for Stress Awareness Month 2022 is to bring ourselves back to something that's real. That, my dear friend, is the antidote. And like I said, this is not new. We have known this as a species from time immemorial. Our ancestors would not have survived the threats and challenges they first faced if they didn't find a way to come together. How have we lost this? And how have we started operating like lone wolves? And how have we made it okay when people do struggle, that we think it's okay for them to collapse or die or take their own life, and not even think that actually maybe we are failing them by not rallying, by not coming together, by not considering how do we protect all of these people that are struggling. They're some of the most vulnerable people in our communities, and particularly children. You know, when I hear these stories of little children that get to the point where they can't take it anymore, but then also realizing that people kind of hear those stories and be like, oh, that's terrible. And like you said, then they just go back to their lives.
So what is stress management, and how can this help people out there? Because this month is April being Stress Awareness Month for stress management. What would you say to anyone?
Well, what is stress management? That's a next to impossible question to answer without giving some kind of a cheesy kind of nondescript response. Ultimately, our job is to start to increase our self-awareness, to know we're in a state that doesn't serve us. Just give context to this. A 2-minute experience of anger can affect your mental, emotional, and physiological state for up to 7 hours.
Wow.
You know, just short bursts of stress and anger can actually have an ongoing impact for hours after that experience. We are designed to get stressed long enough to do what's necessary to remove ourselves from danger or to overpower the threat. That's why it's known as the fight or flight response. So most of us are getting stressed, and our bodies are expecting to be fighting that saber-tooth tiger or running away. But the reality is most of us are not doing that because we're stuck in front of a Zoom call, or our computer's crashed, or we're stuck in a traffic jam, or whatever. As much as you might want to smash the computer to bits or kick the car door out and run away, it's probably not the most appropriate response.
Definitely not.
So here's the first piece of advice I give all of you. Because I could sit here and go on about, do some breathing, do some self-awareness. That stuff's all great, but you know what? There's plenty of that information out there. I'd rather give you something real. Plenty of things that you can get access to help to alleviate the symptoms. But the first step for me is self-awareness, to know when you're in a state that's not serving you. Most of us spend so much time in a state of stress, you kind of think that it's normal.
Yeah.
It's not. You are not designed to be in that state. And over time, it will destroy you. The first thing you start to notice is your energy levels will fade. Then you're more likely to get ill because stress destroys your immune system. You're more susceptible to a cold or a flu. It'll start to affect your relationships, your sleep, your perspective, your confidence, your self-esteem. So, first step, make sure that you are sensitive enough to be able to pick up when your body is in a state that doesn't serve it, and know what action you can take to do something about it. And, when you're going to a state of stress, your body's expecting some kind of physical activity. So are you moving? Are you finding ways to burn off the stress hormones? But also, what are we doing to ensure that we feel supported, that you're a part of something? Because actually, you can cope with a lot more when you know there's a safety net, when you know there's support in place, there's people we can turn to and talk to. and people that will listen to you and hear you in moments of distress. And I think that's one of the things that's really helped me to get through the last 5 weeks. It's been some of the most emotionally challenging days and weeks of my life. And every time I think I'm okay, something will happen and I'll literally have a breakdown again. But having people I can turn to that will listen to me and hear me, not even try and fix me, not even tell me what I should and shouldn't feel, not tell me to stop crying if I'm crying, not tell me it's going to be okay, but just be there to provide an ear and a shoulder to lean on can literally transform how it feels for us to navigate some of these turbulent moments. So, as I said, like first step, increase your self-awareness, ensure you've got people you can turn to and seek out for that sense of support, but also ensure that the people that you are willing to support know that as well. So, really at this stage, the key thing that I'd like people to take away from this discussion is that support network, that sense of community.
Yes.
Who is that person in your community that you could pop around, have a cup of tea and a chat with? Maybe it might be a neighbour that lives by themselves, an elderly labourer, or maybe someone younger that's alone, or someone that's come out of a relationship, or someone that's maybe going through a bit of a tough time. Ensure that you're making the time for them, because here's the thing: the greatest gift you can give someone is your time. This moment is called the present because it is quite literally a gift. And that's the one thing I'm going to encourage everyone to do is I know we're busy, I know we've got stress, pressure, demands in our life, but being able to make the time for each other is how we build that sense of community. And it is quite literally that sense of community that will be the cultural antidote, particularly when it's underpinned with love, compassion, and empathy. It will be the cultural antidote we need to this mental health pandemic we're facing.
And like you say, there's nothing to fix here. There's nothing to do. Just be there. Actively listen to someone. You don't have to do anything. Actively listen. Be there. And I think there's too much going on that, oh yeah, you need to do this, you need to do that. There's nothing to fix.
Absolutely. And just showing empathy. Empathy is quite literally putting yourself in someone else's shoes. You have no idea what it's like to be someone else. But by asking questions, by willing to listen, to really start to understand where they are, it's so much easier for us to connect with each other, particularly at a time where the polarity that we are experiencing on the planet, and fueled by profanity, people fighting each other and arguing and disagreeing, mask, no mask, vaccine, no vaccine, war, no war, Brexit, remain. The list goes
Absolutely.
on. There's so many reasons for us to hate each other. There's so many reasons for us to have polarity. But it's when we're able to combat the polarity and the profanity with the sense of unity underpinned by community is when we can save humanity. And that's really the one thing I'm going to encourage everyone to do is, yes, it's easy to find reasons to hate, but it's also easy to find reasons to love if you're willing to look for them.
Beautifully put, Neil. So where can the listeners get hold of your books? Where can they find you online? What's your website?
So you can find us very easily at stress.org.uk. If you Google search Stress Awareness Month, we come up on top because it's our month. So stress.org.uk, and you'll find a bunch of free resources we put together for Stress Awareness Month. If you're interested in stress at work, you can find us at wellbeing.work. If you look for Stress Man Society on any of the social platforms, you'll be able to find us as well. And my books are available in all good bookstores. Just put my name in, Neil Shah, and you'll find all of my books, including the 10-Step Stress Solution, which is a perfect accompaniment for Stress Awareness Month.
Thank you. And all your information will be in the show notes for anybody that's listening and they want to find them as well. Thank you for sharing your deep, insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today, Neil Shah. So I have a couple of questions I ask all my guests. One of them is, what is one of the most courageous things you've done?
That's an interesting question. I could kind of talk about sporting accomplishments like running marathons and doing the Ironman, climbing mountains and that kind of thing. But actually, I don't think those are the most courageous things I've ever done. I think the most courageous thing I've ever done, the one that basically caused me the most nerves, was And it was only about 3 or 4 years ago, actually, that I shared for the first time the true depths of my experience. Where it was in 2003, I had the breakdown and attempted to end my own life. The first time I shared that was in 2018. And I kind of got to the point where it had been my dirty secret for a long time, for the best part of 15 years. And I realized that if I really want to be authentic and vulnerable and encourage other people to do the same, then I need to be willing to open up and share my story. So, yes, I think, if you ask me in this moment, what's the most courageous thing I've done was literally having to get myself to the point where I was willing to be open, honest, authentic, and vulnerable with my own story. I did it on stage at a conference, Change Your World conference, run by a dear friend of mine, Susie Beaumont, and several hundred people in the audience. And I speak in public for a living, but that was literally the most unnerving thing I've done. And I if I remember correctly, I burst into tears at the moment I shared it, but I knew that it was the right thing to do, and I don't regret that, even though I was petrified.
Can you imagine? Yes, definitely. And it is by sharing our stories we help others. Definitely. What is your definition of courage?
What is my definition of courage? I think courage is when you're literally, you're absolutely petrified, but you're willing to face the beast and do it anyway. As the saying goes, feel the fear and do it anyway. Courage for me is when you are experiencing great fear, debilitating fear, but you're still willing to get up and face it. Now, there's a lot of people that kind of face things and they have no fear, they have no trepidation about it. And on the face of it, the act can look courageous. But, what if you're experiencing agoraphobia and you've been kind of stuck at home in the last few years and you kind of now got to the point where you're scared to go out? And you kind of really, get the support you need and you fight the fear and you step up and you kind of take that step and leave the home. That for me is a hugely courageous act. What if you're about to climb Mount Everest, but you're an experienced climber and there is no fear or there's no concerns attached to this experience? Is that more courageous than the person that leaves their home? I don't think so. It's more about how you feel about the act you're going to engage in and your willingness to do it. So it's not necessarily like the big grand thing that I've done that makes you more courageous, but it's the level of fear you have and your ability to overcome that fear and still go ahead with it anyway. That would be my definition of courage.